Okay, I got to get this over with early. Go Sun Devils.
Boo! Boo!
I'm a proud ASU alum. You got to know that. It's great to be down here in Tucson, though. I'm really glad to see such a crowd. It's a tremendous place. Always love coming down here and beating you guys in football.
Yeah, right!
Like once a decade. Today I want to talk to you about two names. Obama and Trump. Now, they actually have something in common. Fearlessness. Fearlessness. This is what allowed a handful of Americans, about 1/3 by most estimates, to fight and win the Revolutionary War when 1/3 weren't interested and when 1/3 opposed them. You know, the great baseball manager Casey Stengel once said his job as manager was to keep the 1/3 of the guys who didn't give a damn from the 1/3 that hated his guts. And so you can't worry too much about those who are going to hate your guts, because they're out there. You're going to have to be fearless. Nikolai Lenin took over a 160 million person nation called Russia with 20,000 dyed-in-the-wool followers. 20,000. It can be done. That's all you guys need to start the way. So fearlessness. So what can one fearless man or woman do? Well, ask Donald Trump. Trump forced Obama to produce a birth certificate.
Who cares?
Now, I'm not going to weigh in on whether this is the birth certificate. I'm waiting to consult some Kenyan authorities on that first. But even if it is the birth certificate, what did Trump do? The media called him up, had him up on stage. Aren't you embarrassed? And what does Trump say? I'm proud of myself.
What an idiot.
Only I was able to do this. Now let's see the college records. You gotta love it. This is fearlessness. This is how you have to approach this stuff. He has the regime on defense. This is what you need to think. We've got to go on offense. You know, people talk about, well, there's not enough civility anymore. There used to be a lot of civility. You know when there was civility? When Republicans had about 40 guys in the House of Representatives and the Democrats could ram through whatever they wanted. That's when there was civility. Funny how uncivil the other side gets when all of a sudden you have just a little bit of power. Right? People say, well, let's go back to the times of Washington. Well, you know, Washington left office thinking that he was a failure. And he thought he was a failure because Americans didn't get along. But you know, James Madison, one of his best pals, said, George, it doesn't work that way. You have these things called factions. And factions battle each other until you get the best idea. You got to have a little friction to get a pearl. Okay? So Madison understood that it was all about fighting it out until you got the best idea that emerged. Instead of being embarrassed, the Donald said, I'm proud of myself. Let's see the records. Instead of apologizing and being embarrassed, go on offense. Let's take a page out of Saul Alinsky's book. How many of you have read Rules for Radicals? What's wrong with the rest of you? Read Rules for Radicals. Other than A Patriot's History of the United States, it's the most important book you'll ever read. You got to read Rules for Radicals, because Alinsky, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, those guys, when they would stage demonstrations, they would issue a list of demands. And Abby Hoffman said, it didn't matter what the demands were. When they met our demands, we demanded 10 more things. That's how you stay on offense. That's how you get the other side playing defense. That's what we need to do. It's straight out of Alinsky. All right, now let's look for a minute at the budget, because this has been a big issue recently. Was it a victory or a defeat? It all depends on direction. If it stops there, it's a huge defeat. If all we got was 38 billion or 3 billion or 3 million, it's a defeat. But if it's the first step in a long road, then it's a victory. And if you follow Alinsky's rules, it is the first step in a long road. Thank you for the 38 billion. Now we'd like to cut 100 billion. Then we want to cut 1 trillion. And then we want to get rid of, maybe the Department of Education. When was the last time you ever saw liberals really compromise on anything? Have you ever heard them talk about giving up the Department of Energy in return for a tax hike? I haven't heard that in all the years I've been following politics. If you aren't on offense, you are losing. The only champion I ever saw take a beating for 5 rounds and win was Muhammad Ali, and I don't think there's too many Muhammad Alis out there. I suggest you go on offense. Now, you have to be impervious to name-calling. I know many of you are sensitive to this. I'm a professor. I get called racist, fascist all the time. There's hardly a year that goes by that I don't have a student evaluation talking about what a racist or a fascist I am. I wear that as a badge of honor. At least it shows they're in class. At least they're paying attention. So you have to be fearless. Look, folks, they're going to call you names regardless. Did they not call John McCain racist, fascist, evil, even after he bent over backwards to work with him? My fringe. And you know my fringe. You are my friends. No, they're not your friends. I wouldn't say they're my enemies. They are my opponents. But if they're going to treat me like an enemy, I will be happy to reciprocate. I don't want to get along with the Democrats. I want to defeat them. Yeah. The fact is, they don't want to be civil. They don't want to compromise. They want us to submit to them, to come over to their side. I say, to heck with that. It's our turn. It's our turn to stand up. It's our turn to take back our country. By the way, I was born here. It's my country. Now, finally, I'm a film producer. I've recently become a film producer, and I've gotten involved in a movie that we got around here someplace called Rockin' the Wall. I urge you to take a look at it. It's about how rock and roll helped bring down the Iron Curtain. And we interviewed all these rock and rollers from the 60s and the 70s, Vanilla Fudge, The Doors, Toto, Quiet Riot, Mother's Finest, Billy Joel, all these different groups. And we interviewed people from the other side of the Iron Curtain. And some of the most amazing testimony about what America is came from those people on the other side of the Iron Curtain. We interviewed a guy named Leslie Mandoki. Leslie was a drummer in Hungary and a student activist against the communist government there. He said that concerts were against the law, but that they would go out on the college campuses and put up 5,000 flyers, and that night they'd have a concert with 5,000 people before the police showed up, who would arrest him. He knew the police. This is pretty funny. He knew the policeman. The policeman would come up and say, "Leslie, you make me arrest you again. I want to hear the end of one of your concerts. Can you please stop doing this political stuff?" Leslie finally escaped. He escaped to West Germany, where he became a leading musician and producer. He does all the original music for Audi and Volkswagen today. And Leslie said, "Larry, we were Americans. We loved America. We wanted to be Americans." Can you imagine that? When Bruce Springsteen, God love him, played in East Berlin, he's singing his famous song, "Born in the USA." And all the communist youths are out there, born in the USA. They wanted to be born in the USA. They wanted to be here. They loved America. And to his credit, they asked Springsteen, Would you make a political speech? He says, I'm not here to do politics. I'm over here to play rock and roll music. So it was pretty interesting by the time we finished this movie that Leslie got a visit from Mikhail Gorbachev, none other than Gorbachev. And he said, Leslie, we could keep out Western propaganda. We could even keep out Western movies. We could not keep out rock and roll. Well, you want to know something about rock music, and this applies to our modern political system. Rock music is the only essential Western music because it is essentially free. At the beginning of every rock song, the band starts together. At the end of every rock song, the band comes back together. But you know what we got in the middle of every rock song? The solo! You've got to be individuals to play rock and roll music, and you want to know something even greater? Rock and roll music, which I consider to be the best music of the 20th century, came of age, dominates the world. Any place you go in the world today, you will hear American rock and roll music. You can go to Thailand in a karaoke bar, and they're singing to Madonna, right? I had a guy who was bicycling through South Africa, and he said that he came to a bend in the road, and there was a guy with a kiosk, had some food, and had some T-shirts. What T-shirts is he selling? Dave Matthews Band. All right? Here's the thing about rock and roll. Whatever you think of the music form itself, it became the dominant form of music in the 20th century, and it was done without a dime of government money. There was no ministry of rock. But you know what? There was a ministry of rock in the Soviet Union. They actually set up a ministry of rock to try and control rock music and dictate lyrics. That shows you the difference in the system. If you allow freedom to work, freedom will produce the greatest art, the greatest music, the greatest architecture you've ever seen in your lives. But if you try to restrict it, if you allow government to tell you what to build, what to paint, and most of all, what to eat, and I warn you people, they're coming for your ho-hos. They're coming for your ding-dongs. They're coming for your salt. You better, in 20 years, you laugh, I'm going to be out there in a trench coat. Psst, hey, buddy. Plastic bags, salt, ho-hos, a little bit of fat. I got some lard down here. You want some of that? So they're coming for this stuff because they want to regulate your lives, and you have to stand up. These folks behind the Iron Curtain loved America. They wanted to be Americans. They didn't get to experience the freedom that you and I get to experience. And so now's our turn. Now we get to stand up. And we get to say, I love America, I'm going to fight for America, and by God, I'm going to take back America. Thank you.